Well, it's nice to have a little break in Spain. They don't get that in England at all, which is kind of crazy. They're playing these days. But Ruri, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me back on. And yes, nice to get a week off to enjoy some time. Well, at least in my case, with my family and stuff, as opposed to just watching Spanish football relentlessly, which is what I tend to do with my weekends.
Where were you were just traveling around? You go back to the UK just now? Were you in Scotland, England? Where are you from?
Yeah, so well, I'm from Scotland. I've got a few bits of family in England, so I was down there to visit my grandparents this for Christmas. But yes, I was back to Scotland for a couple of weeks, and now just arrived back in Spain. Touched down in Madrid again today. So it was quite startlingly and comically funny. How comically sunny, sorry, when I got back, which was a nice refreshment from getting back to the grey skies of Scotland.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that was a nice welcome back to Spain.
Yeah, it's snowing here in Chicago today, and I like the snow personally. It makes me feel like I'm on a different planet. But Merry Christmas, everyone. If you celebrate, Happy Saturnalia if you celebrate, if you know about that. I took Latin in high school, I had to. But yeah, it's a festive time of the year. Love talking football. I think the big thing right now in Spain, just to jump in, Negreira, Laporta's hearings, that's something that's talked about a lot. I just wanted to ask you, feels like a lot of Real Madrid fans are in a bit of a bubble where there's like a sect of fan that thinks everything we've done right. Everything Florentino touches turns to gold. Give Vinicius everything he wants. And it goes further into the only reason we haven't retained a league title is Negreira. Now, I'm all for critically analyzing Negreira. I think something happened there. There's no question the money means Barcelona are going to get in some sort of trouble. But I feel like there's a bubble that Real Madrid fans are in where they suddenly think everyone's against them, and it's there's a siege mentality, and I'm all for it for like if you're actually on the front lines. But as a fan, to start digesting all these things and to believe that the only reason you didn't win 15 leagues in a row since 2010 is because of Negreira, too far for me. And that's even accepting the argument some of those league titles were because of Negreira. I'm just saying. So where do you see all this? Like, are Real Madrid fans always in a bubble like this, or is this new? Does each Champions League increase the bubble size maybe in the last 15 years?
I think obviously it depends where the club is, basically. I mean, if Real Madrid are winning, you hear less about Negreira, and if they're losing, you hear more about it. And I know that that's a trope that Real Madrid fans get annoyed by, but generally the conversation does turn more, because if Real Madrid are losing, there's going to be one or two controversial calls involved with that. So naturally the conversation then shifts towards referees, and in the last kind of 5-6 years, that's obviously gone towards Negreira. I think, yeah, for me at least, coming from a kind of more neutral view of it, I've kind of checked myself out until the case is done to a certain degree. I mean, you can analyze it and you can go bit by bit. We're going to be drip-fed bits of this case for the next 2 years at least, I'd say, probably. I don't see us getting a kind of verdict anytime soon. So from my point of view, until we get a verdict, it's kind of hard to kind of nail in on any kind of aspect of it, really, because there's so much that we don't know. We'll obviously be given bits and bobs, as I say, but not the entire picture. And at the same time, I think that it's very fair to say that Barcelona should be punished for the very fact that they were paying Negreira, and what you can prove in terms of what they did or didn't influence, that's maybe the crux of the court case. But in terms of just actually paying Negreira itself, that deserves some form of punishment. But yeah, I think it's an argument. I mean, let's not forget that Negreira's not actually been in the referees' kind of committee for the last 5 years, and you can take that with a pinch of salt as well, and you can say that maybe he's not that involved. But I think for the rest of the league, the rest of the league, I think it doesn't really discuss it that much. It only really comes up in a Barcelona-Madrid context, and as we've seen, Florentino Perez kind of change of discourse has made it kind of very much a conversation that's come up in the last kind of 6 months or so.
Yeah, I was always on record saying that Florentino wasn't bringing it up a couple of years ago when there were opportunities because he needed Barcelona commercially and the Super League was involved. And with Barcelona pulling out of the Super League, it seems like there's there's no need to really lean on that duopoly commercially for Real Madrid. There's there's other leagues. We play Man City every year now. They've pretty much artificially created that rivalry by drawing us every year against them. And they have Guardiola. We can pretend that's Barcelona, basically cosplay. And even the passing side to side, everything. But I don't think we need them. And I agree that the timing is very opportune because when we're not playing well, when he wants to appoint a CEO to the new structure, and when the report about the nutritionist comes out, that's when he goes after it. And I thought that was the most suspicious timing of all. It's like straight out of the PR playbook. Pretend the report didn't happen, and then go after your enemies. It was very populist.
And this is something that's occurred throughout the entirety of history. If you look back towards periods where Real Madrid or Barcelona weren't successful, one of them has complained more about the referees as a reason for that. So you can go back to Borussia, you can go back to all of these periods in history. There will be more of a discourse about referees, and Negreira is obviously the latest and first kind of more kind of evidence-based discussion about that. But yeah, it's something that when it's coming up now, I tend to kind of ignore it as much as I can because I don't think it's a conversation that goes anywhere right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's some interesting arguments I haven't looked into fully. Just big disclaimer, I haven't looked into fully, but there's people in there's some interesting writers. There's this one Japanese guy, and then there's this account, the Madrid Spot. They all do feel a little biased sometimes, like they're Real Madrid fans, but there's an argument that the dude on the VAR has a conflict of interest with Barcelona right now. So that's a big thing going around. So the big thing I'm finding with the Negreira stuff, it's not just Negreira, it's just these random little conflicts of interest in Spanish football that are just scattered all over the place. That may go far beyond, to me, it probably does go far, far beyond Negreira, far beyond one team. And I think that's what I find interesting. And I understand there's a contradiction between covering these games as if they're real and then talking about this. Especially getting access, I understand there's a big contradiction. So, I don't mean to rope you in, but it's funny that literally the people talking about this are going to be the ones who don't have any access. It's kind of crazy. Is there anything you have to say about that?
The nutritionist report or interview, so to speak. Yeah.
No, not just the nutritionist. I just mean even if let's say there's too many conflicts of interest in Spanish football, then they might be hey, you're not coming to Barcelona Sociedad if you want to ask about that at the press conference. Just financial conflicts of interest, not with Barcelona. I mean with just different owners maybe and people on the VAR committee, on the referees who financially are tied a little bit randomly in these situations. That's just something, I'm not naming any specifics, I know, but that's just something that a lot of these people in the Madrid trenches, who are biased, don't get me wrong, but they do find some of these things, and it seems a little more blatant. I'll try and pull it up, but I don't know if you have any thoughts just on asking around when it comes to corruption in Spanish football. Nobody's done a crazy job, and I don't think anyone will. Calciopoli, no journalist is going to uncover that before it happens that big. But yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, I won't be uncovering it either. There's a news flash, but I think again, this is kind of we were kind of talking just off air before about kind of maybe the echo chamber, the way that these things kind of get filtered through between different supports. So I think if you're to dip into kind of Barcelona accounts, Barcelona kind of discourse, then you'll find the exact same things. I mean, I know Tebas hates Florentino Perez, but Tebas is a self-declared Real Madrid fan and he is head of La Liga. So obviously, if you're the Barcelona fan, you pick up on that. I think it's the head of Liga FA or one of the kind of refereeing heads for Liga FA is also the wife of Mejia Davila, who's also the Real Madrid kind of delegate. So there's all of these things that I think, for me, I think if you're in football, if you're in Spanish football, you're probably going to be a Real Madrid or a Barcelona fan to some degree. There's probably about a 60-70% chance of that. And you're probably going to have worked for, played with, you're going to have some relationship with the people that are involved with Real Madrid and Barcelona because they're so all-consuming. So for me, again, maybe this is just a leap of ease for me, that I can just jump into this and say, well, everyone's got these links or everyone has this, or I'm going to drop out this conversation until I get a verdict. And perhaps at that point, yeah, you can say that I'm not kind of looking into it enough. But yeah, from my point of view, it's so the conversation is so thick and dense between the two kind of fan bases that they clash so much that I try to ignore it as much as possible, and then actually talk about football, which is in theory what we got into it for.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of Real Madrid fans like the angle I come at it from, and I'm a little bit of a troll sometimes, so that's why I like doing it. Because I'm gonna be honest, like I hate complacency. I hate like drinking your own Kool-Aid. I think self-reflection and honestly just looking in the mirror are very important in society. I think everyone needs more of that, and I think from a Real Madrid perspective, that means not like also questioning all the ways we may have gained favor potentially, and like that's where a lot of fans are just like, get out, dude, like Barcelona cheated us, like who are you, you're a fake fan, and all that shit comes in. And that's precisely why I like doing it, not from the angle of a Real Madrid fan, but more of a trolling the Real Madrid fan who wants it all to be this ideal story, this fairy tale they have in their head, which life is never that simple. And I'm also curious, like the fan in me is secondary to the analyst in me, and the analyst just seeks the truth. I just want to know what really went down.
Absolutely. Which is absolutely fair. And I think there's a good account, well, good, it depends how you look at it, but there's an amusing account called Los Otros 18 in Spanish, the other 18, which basically is going, well, Real Madrid and Barcelona, what on earth are you complaining about? Because you two are the ones that are getting these decisions, which, again, I think we've discussed this before, like you're kind of watered down in the scale of how big you are as well and what decisions you're going to get. But yes, and I'm sure there's a Cadiz fan who's saying, well, Sevilla, I don't know what they complain about because they get loads of decisions too. So depending on what tier you are, where you are, where you come at it from, you're always going to have that kind of perspective. And I think that's part of the entrenchant tribal nature of football, which is kind of what makes it fun as well. But with a giant media machine behind both of these clubs, it kind of, the mudslinging, it sticks quite a lot.
For sure. I think also with the referee things, last thing I'll say is I think empirical analysis is always more fun, and I just see words all the time, and it's like, where's the empirical analysis? Like, you want to talk 2017 Real Bayern? I'll bring up the decisions on both sides. We'll tally it. We'll find a number, and then you have to like look at all the other ties, sample the distribution, all that shit. Go do that. Like, it can't be. It's not like, oh, one bad decision conspiracy. That's some real boneheaded stuff that makes no sense. But yeah, I agree. And now. Another reason it's not the fun winter break for Madrid fans, I guess, is that Barcelona are at 46 points, and if they win their next one, they're at a 98-point pace. Where did that happen out of? Like, it just kind of came out of nowhere while we've sucked. So I don't know if you have any thoughts there, but they've really put it together somehow.
Yeah, Barcelona are a bit of a weird team this year because I think they're much less impressive than they were last year when they were playing at their kind of peak in inverted commas, and they were kind of doing the things that they did so well, and it looked really, really good. And then you had the other games against kind of Las Palmas, so the games that they lost at home, where they looked kind of as if this couldn't possibly work. And now I think we're in kind of a bit of an in-between stage where Hansi Flick has made some compromises. You don't see it as vertical at Barcelona, and that gets you by about 16, 17 of these La Liga sides, especially when you've got kind of the quality of a Lamine Yamal or Rafinha. Obviously, him returning has been big for them. I think they've now got Juan Garcia in goals, who I think is a legit game-changing goalkeeper. I think that makes a huge difference for them as well. You've seen kind of the difference almost overnight between him and Szczesny when he's kind of come back in and Barcelona have started winning games again. So I think there's a couple of factors there. I think the squad is slightly more used to each other. I think you get the likes of Fermin Lopez, who I think is now an established Barcelona player who can contribute in every game. You get the likes of a Gerard Martin, who, even if he's not brilliant, he can contribute. He can have a solid game, and you contrast that with kind of last year, where it felt like it was all or nothing. Barcelona were brilliant or they were dreadful, and now we're kind of getting this in between side. And I think the question mark for them is, you look at those PSG, Chelsea ties and say when they do come up against teams of the top level. Last year, I'd have almost given them, well, I did give them more of a chance. They beat Bayern, they beat Madrid, they beat some big teams on the way, and that was because I think they were playing, the things they were doing were going so right that it was quite impressive. And now I think they're just in a bit more of an in-between stage, and they've compromised a lot.
Yeah, and just pulling up last year's table at this stage, and it's just kind of shocking. Like, everything that's went down these last 2 years. If you told me how it would happen when Mbappe signed after we won, I'd be like, no, you're bullshitting. But this is ridiculous. So last year, Barcelona have 38 points from 19 games. This year, they have 46 from 18. Football is really funny. Like, it's just really funny the way things work.
It makes no sense, and that is part of the reason why it's so entertaining, is because Mbappe was kind of not very good for about 6 months last season, and Real Madrid were kind of much closer to winning things almost, it seemed like, and now he's been really, really good, and they look much less of a team almost. But
yeah, it's ridiculous, and it's so ridiculous. And just going to the table this year, so Barcelona are at 37 expected points per understat. Last year they had more expected points, so and it's just ridiculous. And we were at 34 expected points last year. This year we've gained 5 expected points. 18 games played, 40 points last year. This year we're at 18 games played, 42 points. So we've gotten better, but Barcelona have somehow bullshitted their way to like being there. And what's strange is like we've gotten better, but it's like a lot of B+ games and then some really bad games. And with Barcelona, I think it's been like, even though some of their bad games are still B-. I don't know. Maybe they have less like really bad games. But regardless, this is football. Like, sometimes the ball bounces a little differently. And I don't know how much you could say it's down to the ball bouncing, but I guess in our case, I'll pull up the expected goals in a sec. But, the finishing is a big part of it. We're not scoring anything. And they're scoring a lot, but that's partly because we're trying to play with handbrakes, so it's all related. What do you think? Is it just finishing?
I completely agree. I think if you look at Vinicius, I think Vinicius has played well in some games and poorly in others, but he has missed a lot of chances that you'd expect him to score. I think even if you kind of look at Rodrigo's recent form, he is just finishing some basic chances that should have been finished in previous weeks. And if you look at kind of the early Madrids this season that were doing very well in terms of results, but perhaps lacking something a little bit in terms of play, you look at Amas Santuono, who's not going to score loads of goals, and Arda Güler, who does have a good strike in him, but is not kind of a goal scorer per se. And now you've kind of replaced that with, for example, the Rodrigo in recent games, a Bellingham, players that are much more effective in front of goal in theory. But yeah, it's not quite happening. And I think my big thing, speaking of compromise with Hansi Flick, my big thing is that it does seem as if Xabi Alonso's compromised his system, and Real Madrid are now kind of trying to adapt to a way of playing that gets Vinicius and Mbappe the ball in space more often, that gets Bellingham into the box more often. And Alonso's trying to work out how he can still kind of control games, or whether he can make that kind of sustainable in terms of what he does without the ball. And they're kind of stuck in an in-between stage for me. Yeah,
and I'm saying the big thing here is we've scored 36 goals from 45 expected goals. And some of that is probably the way the system is set up to kind of like play more defensively. And so when the chances come, some of the players are snatching at them. But I agree, the personnel aren't great, and a lot of it is just Florentino choosing to kind of build a team. What's it called? Florentino's just built the team around like commercial opportunities for a long time. And I was just going back through some notes I had in 2019, and he was signing Brahim Diaz while we had James, Isco, and it's just what he's been doing for so long. And eventually that adds up, and not having a Joselu has killed us. Like, if we had Joselu, we would probably be leading the table or something like that. If we had that profile, if we used him as well, which is a whole different thing. I don't know, if we signed a Joselu, would Juni Califat like object or something? I don't know what's happening.
Well, where do you stand on the Gonzalo debate then? Should Gonzalo be getting more minutes, even if it's just for him to stand in the right place?
It's complicated, because when Trent Alexander-Arnold plays, the answer was yes more, and I think that's where Alonso messed up, because with Trent, even if Gonzalo's touch is off, Jude can win the second ball, and Gonzalo can pin the center backs like Joselu said he would do for Jude. So for pinning alone, unfortunately, yes, because like our stars aren't willing to do things like that apparently. like ideally Kylian Mbappe can do that, like everything but the heading. Like, he can occupy 2 center backs at once if he wanted to, but he doesn't want to do that at all. And so that's the issue. So I think Gonzalo should play with Trent Now Trent gone, you're not going to cross it. The chances of even like heading it in are so slim at that point, or the chances of the ball like being delivered in a way where Gonzalo bounces it off a defender and it's in a dangerous area, that goes down. So with Gonzalo out, I think Endrick needs to be playing, and Endrick not playing doesn't make too much sense to me. And I think it comes down to the tension caused by Kylian and Vinny in some ways. Like Kylian doesn't play off the ball, and he kind of plays selfishly, but he scores so much you can't take him off, and that affects the dynamics of whoever's on the pitch. And then Vinny, as you know, literally exerted influence on the dressing room, it feels like, and I don't think he can come off the pitch all the time either. So you put it all together, it's really hard for Alonso. I get it. But I don't think Gonzalo Garcia has it. Just from what I'm seeing, he has no first touch. And, and because, yeah, it's problematic. And the thing is, for these strikers, the first touch is honestly your only touch sometimes. So it's a big problem. Like even for layoffs, I mean, he's nothing like Joselu. And so the real answer is we need a Joselu or need to just play Endrick more. And again, a smarter club thinks about these things, but here we're like, hey, Javi, you like Garcia? Go for it. And then if Javi's like, hey, I don't love Garcia, then Florentino and Jose Angel Sanchez have a convo. And it feels like Jose Angel Sanchez gets his way for a few convos, and then eventually Perez gets mad. He's like, all right, get out of my face, Jose. Like I'm calling Marca, telling them to exert pressure on the dressing room. Like, what's going on? So that's my understanding, that there's been a little bit of a disconnect between Jose Angel Sanchez and Florentino. Florentino views like buying someone that Jose Angel and Alonso want perhaps as like a chore, or like, and this goes back years, by the way. So apparently like Zidane wanted Pogba when he came back, and he wanted a lot of different pieces, and he didn't get all of them. But the pressure was exerted because they're like, hey, we got you Ferland Mendy, go win titles. That's how they think.
Which, to be fair, Ancelotti did go and then do, and Zidane to a degree as well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, Zidane had to deal with the fallout of Hazard and had to try and rehabilitate him. By the time Carlos here, that whole monkey was off everyone's back. I don't think it's fair to accept Zidane to usher in Vinicius without trying Hazard. Like, you got to start Hazard against Tuchel's Chelsea, against Pep's. Like, you paid for this guy. You staked your career on him, and I think Zidane.
Florentino probably argued for as well.
Yeah, at the time, I don't think Florentino was against it, but I think the Jovic and Mendy signings and Militao, those were the ones he's like, win me titles if you want these guys. Yeah. Anything going outside the big two? Speaking of the other 18, anything? I know it hasn't been a great year in Europe for most of us, or any of us. Villarreal having one of the worst showings in Europe for a while. Yeah, how's it going? Any major stories outside?
I guess, optimism here for Real Madrid fans. The big story is Espanyol, who are very much in kind of a Champions League race almost. And that is Barcelona's next game just off the back of the break, the Catalan derby. I think Manolo Gonzalez has been working miracles. So for people that aren't really familiar, this guy was kind of, the trope is that he was a bus driver and he was driving buses for a while, but I think it's something that he's trying to get away from, but he does kind of look like he could drive a bus as well, quite effectively. But yes, anyway, so he spent kind of years and years down in kind of the lower divisions of Catalan football, kind of third, fourth tier, doing quite a good job, but eventually gets the Espanyol B team job about 3 months before they get promoted. He somehow kind of directs them through the promotion playoffs, gets them promoted. They survived by the skin of their teeth last year, which people will be more familiar with. Very much off the back of Joan Garcia being an absolute miracle worker. And then this season, he's been given some pieces. He's in the first division, and he now has kind of options. And what he's been kind of doing with this Espanyol squad, who built as well with the assistance of Fran Garagarza, who's the sporting director, and he was in charge of Eibar during their kind of 7-8 year run in La Liga, where they were very successful too. So they've built this kind of squad which is very useful, that has a lot of different weapons. And if even Real Madrid fans think back to their 2-0 win over Espanyol, it's like a 35-yard screamer from Militao that breaks the deadlock in that game. Then there's one from Mbappe shortly after, and that kind of finishes it. But this Espanyol side are both good and smart in the way that they go about things. They're really, I find them really entertaining to watch, because I think they can turn up and play kind of 4 or 5 different games, and they're always aggressive and they're always competitive.
Yeah. I remember Espanyol when we were trying to give that as an example of a decent team we beat because everyone's like, you beat nobody. Vinny was right to change the tactics. There's that whole thing going on. And hey, we beat Espanyol, we beat Marseille when they were listening, and then look what happened is what I say. But yeah, I mean, I see there's a funny headline from all aboard from Manolo Gonzalez's Espanyol adventure from bus driver to top coach. No, that's cool. I mean, reminds me of Mauricio Sarri, the banker from a few years ago. Coaching in football is so interesting. I've just been thinking, as I do this show and even contemplate the existence of this show, like it's such a niche, esoteric thing almost. Like it's really niche. Not many people are good at it, and it requires so much self-belief. And they also just make them like they print them like iPhones in a factory in Spain. But there's also that. I think this was the first time, Ruri, that the Premier League's top 3 had been coached by Spanish managers. That was put out recently. Arteta, Emery, Guardiola. Any words on Spanish coaching culture and everything? Anything going on here?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think Spanish football is just very, very rich in many senses. I think there's actually, if you look across kind of Europe, there's very few countries that have as much buy-in to football as Spain does. I mean, a lot of other countries, and I know Spain likes its basketball and it does some other sports, but most of these other countries, your Frances, your Germanys, have quite a division, and Germany's probably the other one where you kind of have the strongest coaching school. And I think once Spain kind of put in place a kind of infrastructure, a way of kind of getting these coaches through and kind of educating them, the culture in Spain makes it very easy for these people to become obsessed and to kind of dedicate their lives to it. And as you were saying, kind of being kind of a very almost kind of nihilistic sport in some ways, because I mean, Manolo Gonzalez getting this opportunity was a complete accident. There was no rhyme or reason behind him getting that job, as opposed to somebody else not doing there as well, and him being kind of the person that was there to just kind of hand it over to. And so if he doesn't get that chance, he probably spends the rest of his career in the kind of third, fourth tiers of Spanish football. Maybe not. Maybe he rises to the top and the cream does. I'm increasingly of the view that I think your opportunities are so kind of precious, and if you kind of throw a footballer or a manager one job, their career can change completely. Look at Joselu, who I think has probably been the same striker for kind of 5-6 years of his career, but just got given that opportunity at Real Madrid, won a Champions League, made the difference, but was probably a similar type of player. I don't think he was much worse or better at Alaves 2-3 years before that. So yeah, I think it is interesting the way that these opportunities come about and where people get their breaks.
Yeah. No, Joselu was a good example for sure. I think the ideally, more top teams should look at that utility 9, who's like a mid-table like starter who can easily be a utility 9 off the bench. But
a Lewandowski kind of figure.
Yeah. Well, if you can convince someone to like be like old Lewandowski or Joselu in their prime, that's the hard part, right? These young players. But I mean, hey, I would totally take more money to like sit on the bench every other week and have a higher impact if I were in my prime, especially with the 60 games they play now. Like I wouldn't even want to be a starter as much as I would. Like you're more likely to get injured if you end up being a starter. It's like if you play on the bench, if you ride the bench a couple of years, like Griezmann at Barcelona with that whole 90-minute thing, you might get a good World Cup out of nowhere.
So what you're saying is you have the mentality of Dani Ceballos.
Okay, well,
sorry, I didn't mean to sling any insults.
Now you have me rethinking everything I just said. Now you made me feel like Dani Ceballos. It's funny because I was just reading. I think Ceballos being signed was like the first nail in the coffin when Zidane got kind of pissed off with the board back then, because that was also just the first of Florentino just fucking around. Like we won. And then he just signed Ceballos. Kovacic and Ceballos like rot for 1 year, don't get anything going. And like there were so many things that would have worked better. Like maybe if you put a little more effort to convince Mbappe to join or something back then, instead of signing your projects and then just telling the coach to figure it out. But regarding Spain though, find that super interesting, like the culture thing you mentioned. In general, I agree that the pipelines for football to, like in general, there's a lot of untapped passion in football because it's just one of those things where even if someone's in poverty or doesn't have money, they might be able to generate a disproportionate amount of passion towards football, even if it doesn't come towards anything else, just because football's like that. And therefore, I think there's more passionate minds, players. I'm not sure. I think the pipeline kind of figures it out because like the way genetics and athleticism works, like the cream will rise. But with the minds, it's a lot more of like, do these owners know how to find the right people, give them the right trust, and put them in the right position, like you said with the Joselu, but not even the Joselu, even with Alonso, as we see at Madrid. How many of these coaches and these systems are actually designed like the way Pep designs a team, where it's all personalized for each player? Most organizations do not go about all the other positions in the organization with anywhere near that fluidity. And but that's why I find Spain fascinating, the cultural differences, because clearly something's happened where the coaching talent has spilled over. Like they found a pipeline, they found a way to pull it from the grassroots somewhere. And I guess to go to the thing you were saying about culture, like like when I went to the UK, it did feel, I guess cricket is there, but like it felt pretty football obsessed. It felt like if you're in a given town, like all they want to do is go out to the bar and scream and support their team every weekend. So what's the big difference? Is it like, is there more Spain so they can take the books out and like coach a little more, whereas in England they're drinking more and just playing?
It's a good question. I mean, yeah, I'm wary of making sweeping statements on the entire culture of kind of countries. But I would say, I guess one of the things in Spain you have quite a proud kind of regional football culture as well. So I think you do get these clubs or these teams kind of coming up against each other, and you have within Madrid, you've got kind of 5-6 professional clubs. You've got kind of these very high level kind of boys clubs and stuff, or girls clubs, and they're kind of competing against each other. And then that's your kind of regional competition, and that's probably quite intense. And then you go to Galicia and you have Deportivo and Celta Vigo, who are two institutions in their own right. You've got kind of this kind of competition, this kind of intense kind of combing for talent. Then you go to the Basque Country and you've got kind of, we know the production that the Basque Country is kind of putting out right now. So you've got all these different regions that are organized regionally and then compete nationally. And I guess maybe that makes something of a difference, because if you look at maybe the UK where or England certainly, where much of the talent base is, a lot of it comes out of London, and that's probably because you have that kind of rivalry and that kind of London butter kind of competition, where these kind of smaller areas kind of compete against each other. Again, I have no idea if this is cause or coincidence or that kind of thing. I don't know if there's any correlation, but I guess if you're asking me to kind of look at it and say why is this happening, or what's the difference, I guess maybe that's something that does come into it.
Yeah, totally. And I don't think anyone has I don't know if anyone has a clear cut and dry answer. So I should say to anyone listening, we're just kind of exploring here, curious, because
yes, this is spitballing at its very spittest level. But
well, I've always been curious, just because there's no question that Spanish coaching culture and Spanish midfielder production have differentiated themselves. It's like a national niching within a sport, because like as we always say, like they don't make midfielders like they do in Spain. And even though the best midfielders at Madrid were German and Croatian, they were Spanish in the way they played.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You know it's Spanish, and it's not like even the language anymore. It's like a way of moving on the pitch, which is so interesting to me. It's cultural in that sense, and like just the. And I've started really picking up on it this season because we don't have it anymore on our team. But like the act of like, because even when I don't play many games, but I try to like copy the act of scanning, taking a touch, dragging the midfield, like all those subtle things, weird nerdy things. Like I pay attention to them all the time, like because they teach those in Spain, and I don't know how to say it, but like every sequence in football done by a top team is like involving unlocking the defense like way before, and it all starts from these Spanish moves of Pausa. Pausa dictates football at every level now. I can't unsee it, and it's not just Pausa, but then you have the coaches on top of that, and some of them are quite different. Like Unai Emery is very different to Arteta, to Guardiola, but they all succeed in mathematically analyzing the parameters within which they can implement their styles and successfully implementing them in a way where they actually work. And so those are two different things. Like coaching is a very different niche skill than playing. And that's why I'm so curious culturally, because I wonder if it comes down to like what I envision is this, like out in America, people play baseball, they play the NFL, maybe in the UK. I feel like fan culture is big in the UK. I should say maybe that's a different. I just feel like when I was in Scotland, I didn't feel any of that organized, like grassroots to the top. It's like the Scottish tree feels very different to the English tree of football, or the Welsh, or the Irish. Whereas, and so maybe the fan culture dominates. Maybe in Spain it's more like, when the kids are done with school and they play, the dad's like, hey, no, like passing triangles, or I don't know, like is it ingrained in the culture where you see a correct way to play or something?
It's kind of interesting because, and this is completely anecdotal from kind of my experience, but for example, as you say, Scotland, which I will proudly say has the highest kind of attendance per capita, so like based in Europe, per the population, Scotland has the best attendance in Europe. So the passion is clearly there. Scotland's a small country. Even with the last kind of 10, 15 years. So I have a friend who used to play for Hearts, which are one of kind of the main teams in Scotland. When they were kind of coming through the academy there, they were kind of being shown these videos of, at the time, Guardiola's Barcelona. They were being shown kind of Swansea City at the time under, it must have been Roberto Martinez or Michel or someone. But they were being shown these kind of videos. And I think there was definitely a movement to kind of play more football, to play a different style of football, to keep control of the ball. You see that in a player like a Billy Gilmore, who's obviously come through and now at Napoli doing very well. But even so, the complete kind of attitude shift from the way that other teams play. I mean, if you get the ball in Scotland in midfield, you have a sum total of about 0.0 or 2 seconds to kind of get rid of it again before somebody is kind of on you. And I don't know if it's maybe something in the culture of other players understanding when they have to offer for the ball, or players being able to escape that kind of pressure so swiftly that you can't kind of press like that. Whereas at least in Scotland, at least my anecdotal experience of it was that there was just no time or space to do that. And I think maybe it's the technical quality to be able to execute that pass, to be able to kind of understand when the player is coming, where they're coming from, and where the space is. But yeah, from my point of view, I think, yes, Spanish football, they do just seem to have an understanding kind of nationwide of the time and the space and where to kind of exploit it, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it comes from an understanding of like Spain just feels like they understand the end game of football really well, which is like eventually everyone becomes skilled, everyone becomes athletic, and everyone man marks all over the pitch. And you need the best combo of everything to win. Whereas in England, they suffocate you so much. The idea of being able to be a wizard itself is a little alien. So at the grassroots levels, I just feel like it's discouraged. Like you're kind of called a clown for dribbling. Like it's all about power, crunching tackles, and energy. But with that being said, I just find it interesting. Like you get to a point where all these players are essentially wizards with the ball, and frankly, like all these Spanish things are the only difference in some of these games. Like it's the entire difference. Like one guy being able to hold it up slightly better, turning what is normally just a tough 1v1 where you struggle to keep the ball into a situation of security. Like that's the whole game. And the moments of security where your team can kind of move and take advantage of the fact that one player has the ball, those are the moments where everything happens. And that's why we're struggling, Real. Like we just don't have moments of like receiving, turning, facing goal with time. That doesn't happen. That literally doesn't happen. And I think in England, there's a belief that you can win through heart, through running, and you can win one-off games that way. But it's fundamentally impossible to compete without that wizarding ability, in my opinion, of turn, be able to kind of attract markers, and really just be able to draw double teams into zonal spaces by like through misdirection, by driving, through carrying, by looking somewhere. And all those things just seem alien to most parts of the world.
But to be fair, I think also at this kind of level where you got Real Madrid and Barcelona or kind of, these top teams, essentially, you want it to be a mesh of that. You want it to be kind of a blend. Because if you look at where Barcelona have been successful the last kind of 18 months, it's based on the fact that your Pedris or whoever has the ball, they have that outlet of a Rafinha to kind of move and make those runs for them to kind of open up that space. If you look at the way that Bellingham was really successful in that first season, we talked about Hoslu and the kind of the tandem that they had kind of going. Bellingham made the difference because he had both kind of the heart, the desire, and the understanding of where he had to be positionally, but also that kind of desire to kind of bomb into the box faster, better, more kind of with more desire than anyone else. So I think these players, they do have their kind of their niches, and obviously you want to kind of exploit that in the best way you can, and especially as well, I think Rashford's quite an interesting one, because Rashford's always a player who got the ball in space and was told to kind of go at goal, and you will have the ball in space, we just need to get it to you, that kind of thing. Your shot is your kind of your magic power, your wizardry, so to speak. Now he's playing for a Barcelona side that will face a lot more deeper defenses, and even within a kind of Hansi Flick side that in theory is more direct, you see Rashford kind of trying to kind of learn and to assimilate into that kind of style of game, and having the kind of understanding of when to go, when to kind of hold it, which run to make, that kind of thing. So I think that style of football, even if it's not kind of perfect at a young age, presumably there are Spanish footballers that are picking up the ball a la Modric and doing the things that Modric is doing at the top level very slowly at the age of 7. But by the time they're 12, they've learned how to do that very quickly.
Yep.
And presumably maybe that's the difference, where you get those kind of, as compared to kind of I don't know, in English football or in Scottish football, those players are always having to give the ball quickly. So when they don't kind of, it doesn't come into their brain to kind of turn, or to have that kind of extra ability to turn away, because they've not been doing it slowly, so they can't do it fast.
Yeah. The most English Barcelona player in that sense is Gavi. Like, just has that balance. And Jude versus Pedri, sometimes people point to height. I think there'll always be different players, because Pedri clearly like grew up doing a thing a certain way and learning to like bend a defense. Jude grew up like being a star in like a more English mold, and Jude grew up in the modern English system, which tries to coach players to be more Spanish. That's where Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton, they wouldn't exist if England hadn't like copied Spain. But even Jude wouldn't exist, honestly, if England hadn't copied Spain, I don't think. But the gap is still there, and it's just so noticeable when Rodri comes off for Zubimendi and you just walk over England in the final. England don't have anyone like that. That was I think that was a watershed moment. It's like, you've evolved, like, because a lot of people on the English side have been tracking this, and they're like, we need to evolve. All that evolution just for the backup 6 to come in for the Ballon d'Or winner and just like walk you off the park, while like your best sequence comes when Jude, who went to Spain, like tries everything. But like, he had some good sequences that Euros, even if he was stale. I thought he had a couple Spanish sequences occasionally, and just because that it's kind of antithetical to just how England played. That's why I'm excited to see what Tuchel does with England, because I feel like he has a very good understanding of like how to. I just think he understands football well, in terms of like he's too good for international football. So his quality level is way above what we're used to there. So like De La Fuente, like that's a real matchup now. Like De La Fuente is too good, but like he's gonna look like, against someone like Tuchel, he's just another tactician, because these club coaches are so much better. But just on Spain, quick note. I wonder if it's almost like general. My understanding is football is viewed as like a workman's sport in a lot of parts of the world. But I wonder, it just feels like in Spain, even outside Barcelona, if it's just viewed as like an aesthetic thing to enjoy with a glass of wine, like a cinema almost. It just feels like it feels more like a movie, like a poem. Whereas in other parts of the world, it's like you roll up your sleeves and you get to work. Like you're no matter where you are, you can roll up your sleeves and go man mark your man and go win the ball. But it's just a different way of thinking, and I think Germany also leans very much into that. And I will say, the only thing I will say on the flip is I do think Spain underrates off-ball movement, and I do think Cristiano Ronaldo's legacy has been dealt damage by people who view things very ball-centric over the years. Just because, I mean, like, we're all about off-ball movement. I think Bale and Ronaldo were very non-Spanish players, and that's what makes that era special for us. It's like we combined the Spanish with these aliens, and we won. But yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Like, do they view it more as like a movie, a TV show that's meant to be enjoyed with plot and drama, not just a game?
It's interesting. Again, I would kind of fall on that kind of regional aspect of it, because I think if you go to the Basque Country, I mean, they're always kind of dubbed as kind of this more English approach to football, and I think you do get a lot more of that if you go to kind of Donostia, if you go to Bilbao. You will see San Mamés kind of cheer on their footballers and try and kind of will the ball in, kind of almost. Whereas if you go to the Bernabeu, it's much more, what can you do for me today, kind of approach. If you go to Camp Nou, it's the same. It's entertain me, and then I'll kind of give you kind of your plaudits and that kind of thing. So Yeah, I think each of these reasons has kind of almost these different approaches or different kind of
Wait, so
ways of view.
the approach matters? You're saying like they go by to take it partly for the approach. It's like watching an art house movie. You watch it because it's art house. You don't watch it just for the sake of watching the movie, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I don't know. I think if you each region is kind of fundamentally Spanish to a degree. So, for instance, Subimendi is that second six, and he's still come out of Basque football because fundamentally he's still part of Spanish football. But he exists within kind of a bit more of a blood and thunder kind of game or kind of system or style of football. Then that said, I think kind of if you're looking at it kind of from a more macro level in terms of international teams as well, I think the international teams that can really tap into their personality are the ones that are successful. So Spain has tapped into their kind of ball playing control, that idea that we keep the ball, we probe, we find a way through. Even if De La Fuente's kind of eased up on that a bit and gone a bit more direct, which is an interesting. I'll get your thoughts on that in a second. An interesting question for the future. But if you look at Italy for the longest time was kind of renowned for these kind of hard man defenders, people that would get in your face, that would find a way to kind of nip away at you, to put you off your game, to position themselves in a way that you couldn't function properly. It was all about kind of disturbing what you were doing. And that was their personality, and it worked for them because even though they had kind of very talented players, you had your kind of Tottis, you had your Pirlos, you had this kind of fundamental basis of Rino Gattuso, of Materazzi, of kind of Chiellini, Cannavaro, players that were good at kind of stopping you from playing. And that kind of somewhere in Italian culture or in Italian football, that kind of hit on something. I think with Spain, that hit. I think if you look at this Argentina side, which was blessed with a lot of quality and magic, it was also probably the side that was most blood and thunder, most kind of we're going to die for the shirt, the one that won the World Cup. That's the side that's been most like that. If you look at, I mean, Rodrigo de Paul is not the best midfielder that Argentina have produced in the last 20 years, but he was also Messi's bodyguard, and for some reason that kind of worked. So, yeah, like I think tapping into your personality and finding a way to kind of adapt to your players. And I don't know what you think about kind of De La Fuente, because I think Luis Enrique started it but didn't quite manage to pull it off. I think De La Fuente is kind of this generation of Spanish managers that are a little bit more direct. De La Fuente, incidentally, who did play for Athletic, so he is kind of he does have that kind of Basque mindset too. So yeah, I don't know if you think Spain is going to go more direct, and if that might kind of harm them long term almost in terms of their production of those midfielders.
Well, that's what I think is interesting, because the game has changed so much. And Spain has stayed true to themselves and won. I don't know if that will. I think that will just make them double down because you're still not getting any strikers out of Spain. The wingers are okay up and down. Like you get Yamal and Nico, but like that's two. You don't have like France where a new one spawns like every tournament. like yeah, so it's not like that. So that's what's interesting. But the midfield is like I know it's going to happen, but for it to keep happening is crazy. Like you have guys who don't make the national team who like these other teams would kill for just for some oxygen on the pitch. And so I don't think the style will die. I think what De La Fuente does is separate. I think you just have to evolve a national team sometimes. And I mean, teams know that Spain are good at controlling the ball, so they're just going to put more pressure on the ball. And I've tried running the simulations a bunch of times. When the pressure goes up, at some point, you have to learn to just play through it a little faster, or you're going to get caught on your feet. I think that's what he might be doing. It could be just because, like, you can't try to slow down beyond a certain point, I should say. And I think teams know now that if you let Spain play at their own pace, you're screwed. There's just no point. They will pick you apart. So looking at the results, though, I mean, to be honest, like, outside that Turkey game, and there was the Nations League game, I guess, where they kind of gave it up defensively. Well, the Nations League game, I'll say this. You're going up against Vitinha, Joao Neves, like Nuno Mendes. It's really hard when you play the same archetype in the mirror. It's just hard to win, man. I will say that.
Vitinha's the one that Spain would maybe be like, maybe he would get in our team.
Yeah, and Neves and Nuno Mendes as well would be phenomenal. So I think with that's more of De La Fuente just kind of having to, like, with all coaches who are on the same team, I think you can't win the same way every year again and again. Even look at Guardiola at City. He really has changed a lot over time. you can't keep winning the same way. And even Guardiola said, like, when he played us, it's really hard to beat Real Madrid playing the same way 2 years in a row, just playing Carlos. So repetition is challenging, and I think I'm curious to see how long De La Fuente keeps it going. I do think he also benefited from Enrique. So I think now we find out what he's really made of more than anything, because, like, honestly, taking over from Enrique and tweaking things is easier than, like, keeping that going 3-4 years in, much harder. And also, just the thing on what you said culturally, I guess we should close out. See, this is what happens when you have a fun convo. It draws a little longer when it's not analytical. But I was just, I feel what you said about the Italians. And, like, my understanding is, like, Italian family culture is, like, a little unique, even into Europe, and my understanding. And just the way, just from my understanding, experience interacting with them. And I just wonder how much, I do feel like the defense is rooted culturally, even beyond football. And, I'm always fascinated in just finding the very origin, because, like, it's just a cool way to understand the story, and definitely something I'm going to look into. And I think part of it could be, I don't know when, like, maybe the rise of football related to wartime back in the 20th century. I feel like a lot of these things have roots in the 20th century. But what's fascinating is that as the game globalizes, some of these things stay the same. That's what I find fun, because really with globalization now, places lose some of their flavor and uniqueness. And so to see uniqueness stay the same through institutions and football at the international level, just find it fascinating. Like, what's going on that keeps the Spanish midfielder turning that way, the Italian defender clearing the ball every time he can? Like, it's it runs deep, man. And the world has changed a lot. Like, globalization has changed so much. We all read the same things, we watch the same things. So fundamentally, like, these things that are different, I always find it fascinating. And the big four that are super interesting are Spain, Germany, Germany obviously with the speed and the up and down, the Gigan pressing, Italy with the catenaccio, Spain with the playmaking, and England just, I will say this, England feels just a little anti-Spain sometimes in terms of the way they approach the game. Because traditionally, historically, you think England, France are kind of a dichotomy of rivals next to each other. But in a football sense, France doesn't seem to have a identity, I would argue, because what France's identity seems to be, there's so many people who've come there, so many people in Paris, like, their identity is Paris, the same way England seems to be London. Like, just talent everywhere, more talent, globalized talent, people from all parts of the world. So you get exotic genetics you can't get anywhere else, and endless talent that they just don't get in Germany and Spain. Like, the volume is just there. Yeah, those are the four I find fascinating. I guess any thoughts maybe on France? Like, they don't have a style, you know. Even French coaches are not taken seriously outside Zidane. They're not seen as a coaching place at all, for example.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because if you go back to 1998, that France team that won the World Cup had a lot of talent, but they also had Stefan Guivarc'h, who was their kind of Giroud figure, who didn't score in that tournament, but they did kind of do his job, and kind of allowed the players to play off him. You had kind of quite a defensive midfielder. I know you had Zidane in there as well, but you had kind of Emmanuel Petit, and you had Djorkaeff playing kind of on the right, which kind of throws me back to kind of like Blaise Matuidi playing on the wing, or Moussa Sissoko playing on the wing for France. So
Kante, Makelele as well. Like, you always have their defensive role players out there.
Yeah, so and obviously it's Deschamps who was also kind of in that team. Deschamps was the one coaching that 2018 team as well. So yeah, they don't have kind of a clear kind of identity all the way through. But if you look at their success, I mean, maybe it's just because it's Deschamps and he's just kind of done well. I've got the recipe and it's worked for me before. I'll do it again, that kind of thing. But yeah, France are an interesting one. I also find Germany fascinating because the way that they won that 2014 was so much more Spain. And I think that was influenced by them losing that 2008 final. But yeah, playing without a proper striker. I know you had Klose kind of off the bench in 2014, but it was fundamentally kind of a nineless system, and you had kind of the a much more kind of possession-based approach with Toni Kroos, obviously, who Antonio Kroos as they call him here. So yeah, you have kind of all these kind of nuances which Germany kind of, I think England and Germany have almost done similar things in the sense that when Spain won that 2008, 2010, they both looked at that and were like, how can we replicate that? Germany did it to great effect. England haven't quite managed it, but yeah, how they kind of introduce elements of other games and then try to kind of pair that with their own personality is interesting. And I think even this German side, which I think is stacked with quality and fundamentally players that you feel would be good in Spain, Musiala, Wirtz, these kind of players, why is that not working? Why is that not quite fit with this
Well,
side?
well, that's what I want to say. That's why I don't think Spain's going away, because it feels like Spain, even if they want to, like we said, can't produce forwards for some reason. But Germany, by copying Spain, stopped producing forwards they could produce anyways for a bit, if you recall. Because 2016, like it's like, yo, just put a 9 there. Like Muller needs a 9, and Muller was out there looking kind of like a clown on his own up front, if you remember. And like just didn't have it as a 9 on his own. And if they had a Kai Havertz, then it would have helped. If they had a who's the other good German striker now? Woltemade. Yeah, Woltemade.
Yes.
So there was no Woltemade for a whole decade, and I think that was a consequence of them becoming too Spanish. This is I think Michael Cox has spoken on this in length before. I love that when he breaks this stuff down, but he's like, yeah, like Germany stopped being German. They went too Spanish. They didn't win in 2016, 2018. They're a caricature. Then they tried hiring Hansi Flick, going all in on possession, but that's a tough game model at the international level where you give up so many chances. But England, I would argue honestly that England, where they've succeeded is that they haven't gotten too sucked in. Like I would argue that Germany winning glosses over how much their developmental cycle took a hit, whereas England linearly have had maybe the best squad in their history every point. 2018, 20, when they reached the Euro final. The last Euro final squad was more sophisticated technically, tactically, physically than the one before that. You get guys like Jude Bellingham, who just, no English midfielder had ever done anything like he'd achieved before. So I think England have actually gotten linearly better, and I think Gareth Southgate was horrible, like disaster. And I think Didier Deschamps had Mbappe and Pogba at his best. That's the difference between him and Southgate, like honestly. But so I think England have done a great job. Germany, I think the main thing for me is they don't seem to have like 3 copies of the midfielders like Spain, and they also don't have like the 5 like superstar attackers of Ekiteke, Mbappe, Olise like France, and they don't have a superstar maybe at every position like England. So I think that's where I just don't know where German football is going fully. But with that being said, I don't follow German football. I'm very uneducated in this regard, so I do want to say that. Like,
I should also preface that, but
I'm judging the Florian Wirtz thing, man. Like, I'm judging that. How can you not? How can you not?
but I think the Southgate thing as well. He did clean up that dressing room a lot, because I don't know what it was, but somehow England, whenever I watched them, seemed to be completely lacking any sort of cohesion at all times. That it was as if they were kind of strangers at all times. Whereas under Southgate, they do seem to have kind of a team mentality, and I know they're under Tuchel now, and obviously he has that kind of base. And we talked about kind of Luis Enrique kind of providing a base for De La Fuente. One of the things that De La Fuente has, by hook or by crook, I don't know how he's done it, but the atmosphere in that Spain dressing room has been unbelievable since De La Fuente's been there. And so even if kind of Luis Enrique had that base, I don't think he ever had that kind of atmosphere. And I think Southgate atmospherically has been brilliant. He's been like a giant kind of he's kind of closed the ozone hole for England almost. He's cleaned up the air a lot. So there's so many obviously elements that go into these teams and to whether they win a tournament or not as well. I think I did feel for Southgate. I thought he was a little bit unlucky. I think bounce to the ball, you get one or two things go a different way. I think he was quite unlucky not to end up winning a tournament just by almost kind of sheer quality and the fact that they were kind of united.
Yeah, no, I think Southgate did as much as Deschamps, and I think like both of them could more or less have won one, and like Portugal have got one, so like if Portugal get one, why can't these guys get one for sure? Or Southgate's the unlucky of the 3 between the old Portugal coach, was it Fernando Santos, the guy?
Yes.
Oh man,
miracle that he won that, but yeah.
Oh god, I got so tired of seeing his face at every tournament after a point. But so some guys get away with it, but I just think some squads are so stacked they're bound to win one anyways, and I think Portugal, France, and Spain, England have been in that category. So and the other thing is I think just a little bit of inventiveness to not be the one chasing the ball all the time against Spain. If he had shown that in any game before Spain, he never showed that. Like, just a little bit of like controlling the game. Like, at least Deschamps showed a willingness to like destroy the game in 2018. Southgate did show that, But I think you reach a level of quality where that's a little risky, and if you can show the willingness to also impose yourself for 10 minutes, it just lets people breathe, lets you survive, and I think he kind of made it uphill for them sometimes. Like again with the ball, like rarely doing enough with the ball, a little stale. But with that being said, you're right about the atmosphere because I don't know what Tuchel's doing with Jude, but he's been weird. He's been weird multiple times.
He said some weird things, like
things he should have just batted off. Sense. Things he should have batted off much more easily, given everything he knows. Yeah, so I think that's going to be interesting because you have Morgan Rogers of Aston Villa knocking on the door, Phil Foden of Man City, and those teams are having cohesive seasons relative to us right now. Even though they're second and third, even though we're second, like I know, but I will say this: the last thing, Jude looked really good going into the break. Last couple of games, Benzema made those comments about how he needs to be the playmaker, and he kind of took it to heart. He stopped running into the box all the time, and he looked to receive back the goal and circulate for the sake of circulation. Which again, before it was a lot of like receive, turn, can I make the Hollywood move, and it's a little bit less of that. And I think that Spanish turn is great because that's what you need when you're playing these Pedris and Vitinhas and all these guys. Like Jude needs to be able to bring some of that against those players because I don't know. I just feel like you're kind of like a sorcerer on the pitch. Like you're not just trying to like reach the other side. You're trying to like cast spells and control the game. And Jude's kind of seeing the game that way now. I like that. So which is my way of saying if he gets benched, it would be a disaster. Now you better not bench. Like before 2 games, I would have accepted it. Now I think it would actually be controversial to bench him for too long.
I actually think the criticism of Bellingham's been a bit harsh of late. I mean, I think if you look at all of Real Madrid's midfielders, none of them are particularly performing well, and Bellingham is nominally at least playing in midfield. So there's something going on there. I think Bellingham is. He obviously had the Clasico where he was very, very good, and then he had 1 or 2 other games where I was quite impressed with him. I thought against Elche he was quite good. I think he comes up with the equaliser, is it, against Elche?
Something like that. Let me.
It was 2-2, but yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I think he's had like 2 or 3 or 4 games where he's been really quite good since he kind of got fully fit, and now he just kind of needs to find a role because I think. Consequence of that kind of heart that he has, that kind of the whole kind of English kind of mentality of blood and guts kind of thing. I think he does give you that he will kind of pull you through moments at times, even if he's not playing well, even if he doesn't have a good situation to play in. So yeah, I think it's been a little bit harsh. I mean, there's been headlines here for people that aren't kind of across it saying Jude is a problem, or what do we do with Jude, or finding a position for Jude. And I think it's a little bit overplayed, and I think it's more of a function of Real Madrid's dysfunction than it is.
His technical flow is really high. I never thought he was too associative, but he's had moments, maybe the start of last year under Carlo tried him deeper, and now where you can see that ultimately if he moves too much, you're never going to get the benefit of some of that technical quality if he moves too much. And so just learning to play phases of the game more stationary and then save all that movement for the bursts where it's really needed. I think that's been the challenge because the reality is football is a young man's game where the team that can make 1,000 runs and do everything is going to be more dangerous sometimes. Like that's why Vinicius and Jude were able to lead us to so many titles. But it's you just can't approach it that way the whole game. And right now, he's the only one with the technical floor who could even help us approach it differently, which is what's sad. Like we don't have players who can help us do that, and that's why he's in that role. Ideally, he does return to more of a Muller style role. I think with the right team, because I think he is good at it. I think Muller with a little more press resistance, a little more control would be amazing for him. And right now, we just the way football is going in some of these teams, they just can't put him there. They need a little more away from the box from him. Any last thoughts here around Christmas, New Year? Anything fun going on with you, Ruri? Anything fun with Football Espana or Spanish football or anything?
Most fun is I think I'll be at Rayo Getafe on Friday, so make of that what you will. For me, fun. For others, less so. But yeah, no, that's kind of the majority of it. I've got a piece coming out this week on kind of Alonso and how hard it is to kind of shift the culture at Real Madrid and how he's kind of come up against some buffers, that kind of thing. So yeah, tune into that, which in theory at least should reach your audience well.
Yeah, no, I do try to share a couple things here and there from Football Espana. If you follow the Twitter, regardless, Ruri's on Twitter. You can check him out. If you follow us on Twitter, Real Deal Pods, we'll share all of it. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been a fun little episode during winter break. We will be back in touch with you with our programming. Ruri will be back on at some point for sure, and we will talk to you all later.